Hey everybody, welcome to a Sunday edition of Coffee Hour with Paul. My name is Paul Abernathy. By chance you don't know who the heck I am, welcome to the live stream. Nope, this is not a recording. Well, I guess it could be a recording because y'all know that I replay these all the time. But no coffee today, even though it is coffee hour, drinking my icy as I always do. Welcome. Glad you could take the time out of your day to join me. It is Sunday, God's day. So taking a little bit of that day for me means a lot. So today's episode of Coffee Hour, I want to talk about a couple things and kind of share some things with you that's going on and what's happening. But again, we're going to focus on this episode to the electrical inspector and dealing with an issue of understanding nameplate ratings of HVAC units, outside air conditioning units. It just seems to be a topic that always comes up in debate, because we're so focused on protecting conductors, right? That's what the overcurrent protective device is for. It's not always necessarily to protect the load. It's to protect our conductors, because that's your lifeblood. If that goes down or the insulation melts down or something, then everything goes to crap after that. So one of those type of things. But I think a lot of times people get confused with the allowances when you have small conductor rules and you have overcurrent protection and all this kind of stuff. And we're so focused on sizing things for the loads and taking those things in consideration that we have sometimes even inspectors, which have a lot of load on their plate, right? Okay, no pun intended. But they definitely have to look at a lot of things. So many times, and I get this comment over and over again, is that they just don't feel comfortable, for example, with a 10 gauge conductor that has a certain ampacity, and then they're terminating it into an overcurrent device, which may exceed what they would normally select, right? And it becomes one of those things that they just don't feel comfortable with it. And I get it. And we see the exact same thing for motors as well. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today in this episode and kind of clear some of those things up for the electrical inspectors out there. And of course, electricians, if you're having one of those arguments with an electrical inspector, you can always share this video and maybe they will get something out of it, that type of thing. All right. So as most of you probably know, or I don't know if you do know or not, but I've been doing a few little experiments over on our TikTok channel. And I'm not a big TikTok fan. Y'all all know this. Well, I've said it multiple times. What I embarked on, again, a company's always looking to do what you do with marketing. And my courses, which I pound for pound will tell you, I am biased. Don't get me wrong, I am biased. Pound for pound, I think my programs and the things that we offer are better than anybody else's out there. I get it. Code is code. But the amount of interaction you get with me and the emails that you get actually somebody to answer a question for you, the ability to call me, the ability to text me, the ability to get our app and reach out to me in the app, all those, service is king. Okay, so you can do the work and you can be the best electrician in the world, but if you have a crappy ass attitude and you go to a job and you don't have those soft skills with the customer, they're probably not going to hire you again, even if you solve the issue. Nobody likes that kind of crap. So what I wanted to do was a little experiment and over on the TikTok, and which again, don't care much for the platform, but and then once you put it on your phone, China has all your information already, so you might as well keep going if you already put it on there. They know everything anyway. 3-minute platform is really hard for me to explain anything, so it's tough because you've got 3 minutes to convey something, and there's always the trolls are going to comment on it, thinking that you're not that smart and you actually forgot something, and you realize you've got 3 minutes. And you can't convey everything in 3 minutes. So you do your best to do that. So it's not the greatest education platform because of that limitation. This is why I use all the other platforms more than the TikTok. But I wanted to do a little experiment. So I did some videos and I posted them up there. And one of them I did got over, I think right now it's over 175,000 or somewhere around there views in a matter of just a day. Now, that was part of an experiment. So I took a video and I chopped a portion of somebody else's video only to highlight where you take non-metallic sheath cables into the back of a cabinet. And boy, did I get the comments from everything from I'm a hack to it's okay and the HJ has the authority. I already knew this was coming. Trust me, I don't do anything on social media that I'm not prepared to take the heat or know what I get. So I'm not like your normal educator. I'm not always politically correct. I'm not here to coddle somebody's feelings. I'm not an educator also that watches what they say because they're worried about whether or not they sell courses. I'm hoping you don't come to me. If I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat, and there's the reason you don't buy my course, then that's your problem. I am an equal opportunity instructor. I don't care whether you're a Christian, you're an atheist, or you're a Buddhist. I don't care. I teach code. I don't get into that. Okay. I don't care whether you hate guns or you love guns. I love guns. I don't care. I'm only here to teach you the code, but I'm also not here to candy code it, right? And some people say that's poor bedside manners for an educator. I don't really give a damn. I'm only here to make you a better electrician. That's it. So I embarked on this little experiment with TikTok. And you can go over to it. It's at Master the NEC. So I'm guessing it's tiktok.com or whatever it is, /@MasterTheNEC. I don't know. You can find it. The easiest way to find my stuff is actually on TikTok, is do a search, do hashtag Electrical Code Academy, and that'll give you all of my videos. So kind of funny. You can scroll through it, but that's what the hashtags do. It allows you to go straight to somebody's videos. So I did that. I also have a hashtag coffee hour with Paul, but you're going to get more of them by doing hashtag Electrical Code Academy when you're doing a search on TikTok, if you're interested. Okay. Some people don't like that platform. And then let me tell you, if you don't already have it on your phone, don't do it, because it is a direct link to China. I know it sounds paranoia, but that's what Congress is looking at now. And they've also put the ultimatum out there to the Google Play Store as well as the Apple Play Store to remove it if something doesn't change. So I'm not making it up, but I have it. It's on my phone. So they have every bit of information about me that's on my phone, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I'm prepared for that. So anyway, the experiment was, and nobody really asked me what my opinion was of going into the back of a cabinet. You'll notice in that video, if you choose to go watch it, that usually in the bottom of a cabinet, you have the two knockouts with the concentric knockouts. And that's for SE cables, service entrance cables, and things like that. You could also use it to bring in large NMB, or you could use it to bring in any type of other types of cables, MC cables or whatnot. It really wasn't designed to knock it out and bring a bundle of non-metallic sheath cables into it. Now, you want to know my opinion, since I didn't share it on TikTok? I don't have that much of a heartburn over it. All I did was explain the code. And people say on some other forums that the NEC doesn't address that issue. It does. 312.5c is attempting to address that issue because it wants you to secure all the cables to the cabinet. And you're really not if you're bringing them through like a TA, or in this case, in that video, it was through a bushing. Now, in that video, the guy didn't actually bring them through the provided KO, concentrics KO. He actually punched additional holes, then put bushings on them, and then bring all of them into it. Look, I don't have a problem with it. Some of the HJs will approve it. I really don't have a problem. But everybody on that platform that says it's perfectly fine and all this kind of stuff, I have a method to my madness. So anybody that knows me, sometimes I'll goof around. But the reality is, the reason I did that was to bring awareness. If people out there believe that the code is something that they don't have to follow, and I could go into all those other things, but if you believe that the code is not something you have to follow, and if you think that that is not a concern, the code panel seems to think it is. That's why it gives you an alternate method, an exception, if you want to come into the cabinet and you meet all those rules or 7 items, then you're allowed to do that. There's a reason they have that, because they don't want you to do it the other way, and that is bring individual NMBs in a cluster into the back of a panel. So, any rate, if you believe that it's okay, do it. And if the AHJ is okay with it, that's fine. Just remember, at the end of the day, just because an AHJ approves something, and this is what people lose sight of, and I'm talking to inspectors, and that's what this episode's about. That's why I'm bringing this up. If you approve something, make sure that you're approving it for a reason. It's a standard practice for your jurisdiction and not just your own personal will. Why? Because who's responsible for that installation? The electrician is always responsible, regardless. If an inspector approves something, I think people think that once it gets that seal of approval that they don't have any liability anymore. I was ahead of multiple jurisdictions, okay? I had to always work with the lawyers for the city attorneys and whatnot. I'm telling you right now, if you've never done it, or you've never been an inspector, or you've never been ahead of a jurisdiction, even the inspectors don't meet with the lawyers and stuff like that on a regular basis. I used to meet with them. We'd have these discussions to protect the liability of the municipality. I'm going to tell you right now, inspector, you're not totally immune. If you approve something because you're just like, I don't care what the code says, then you're going to be liable as well if something goes wrong. The National Electrical Code is adopted by the state, okay? And they can make amendments to it. Yep. But it is still the minimum safety standard. And people hate when I say that. It is the minimum safety standard, because anything that you do that you allow as an inspector to go below what's listed in the code book is, again, going to be fodder for potential lawsuits. Now, I've been an expert witness on cases, and I have one coming up here in a couple months in New York, and it is dealing with inspections. And so I have to tell you, you're not immune. If you pass something you know is wrong, if you pass something that you know is not meeting the minimum standard. Now, you're not there to impose your own will on anybody as an inspector. You can't say, well, that's the way I did it when I was a contractor. That's none of your business. As long as it meets the NEC, which is adopted by your state, and any amendments that are agreed on by your jurisdiction, which kind of takes it out of your hands because you can point a finger at the jurisdiction. Inspectors, don't create your own will. Just do your job. Do your inspection. But here's some advice I'll give to electrical inspectors, and I used to give this to all my inspectors that worked under me. Don't develop a God complex. Be willing to learn something new every day and embrace what the electrician has to share with you. Whether you agree with it or not, you're the one that's got to make the interpretation on the relativity of their argument versus what you think the code says. And you can hold that, and you can actually defend that in court, because again, it's about interpretation. But if you know something is wrong and it's not as black and white, and you make a ruling and you know you drop below the standard, then you are potentially liable. You are. Don't think that you have blanket immunity, because you don't. And you need to talk to a city attorney, not just assume it. So when I see all these TikTok claims, they forget that I worked for municipalities, that I was the AHJ when it came to electrical decisions in multiple jurisdictions in Virginia before I moved to Texas. I met with the lawyers. I know what the rules are. So I'm just trying to help people, okay? So usually the electricians that'll comment probably have no inside knowledge of that. And so they're just willing to do whatever the inspector says, and that's fine. If that helps you defer an argument and it helps get your install done and it's not too critical, then you do you. But if it's something huge that is going to impact cost that I've got to carry over to my customer, then it's worth an argument. And remember that every electrical inspector has a supervisor. Every supervisor has a building official. Every building official has either a city manager or a mayor, okay? You raise enough stink, then you can get things corrected. And I would not worry about repercussions, because there's rules and laws about that as well. And if you can prove somebody was holding something over your head, and one of the easiest ways to do that is if they're making you do something that in the code says you don't have to, but they're making you do it, and you can tie that to a recent issue where they are possibly using retaliation, you've got a case. And you know what? If you're running into that anywhere in the country, I encourage you to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help you out. I have a lot of resources, and I will help you fight that fight, okay? I love my inspectors. I am one at heart. I am also an electrician at heart, okay? So, but again, at the end of the day, we want the safe installation for our consumer. That's what we're doing this for, right? We're doing it for the consumer. We have all these rules in the code book to protect the consumer, okay? From the hazards that arise from dealing with electricity, okay? The scope of the NEC, okay? All right, so that's the first part of the segment. I'm done with that. So remember, there is no blanket immunity, and I'm just hoping you learn from that. There's going to be people that disagree with me, and that's fine. You're entitled to disagree, and that's your prerogative. Go for it. And I pray that you never, ever run into a situation where you're going to have to go into court. It's rare, but do me a favor. Why don't you Google electrical inspectors and look up lawsuits, electrical inspectors, and all that kind of stuff, and you might be surprised at what you actually see. There is no such thing as blanket immunity. All right, let's go on into the next thing I wanted to talk about on this episode before I get to what you came here for. Of course, I've always got to give you more and tease you before we get to the topic. I can't help it. That's the way I am. Industry, for as far as our news, starting in, I think, a week and a half, we are launching the Fast Trax Plus. And so what is the difference in the current Fast Trax Black and the Fast Trax Plus? Well, for those that are interested, the Fast Trax Plus is going to include all of our exclusive videos in it without you having to worry about buying a monthly subscription or an annual subscription. Now, those that already purchased it, I'm sorry, it's like anything. You can't go backwards. Again, I appreciate your support. I really do. And a lot of people support us in what we do in doing our annual or monthly subscriptions. And they're still going to be available, right? For those that aren't willing to purchase the Fast Trax. But the Fast Trax Plus, moving forward, when we switch to Fast Trax Plus, you're going to get access to those exclusive videos. And right now we have, I don't know, about 10 or 15 new videos. We have videos that are available actually also on the app. But if you go to our website, you'll probably notice that under the members only area, there's another tab now that drops down underneath it. So you can get a lot of those, also those exclusive videos that aren't in the members only area. In those videos, you still can purchase them. If you're not a member, you can, I think they're like $5.99 if there's a specific video you want. But those videos are our newer videos, and more is adding every day. I added 2 yesterday, which were, one was on box fill and the other one was pull box calculations. So I've added that to my range videos that are there. One's on sizing the branch circuit and protection for range. And then one is on the load contribution to feeder or service load. And of course you have our single family dwelling optional and standard videos that are there. And it's broken down into parts because, again, to try to make it a little more palatable, because I do have the gift of gab and I can run on forever. So you're not telling me anything new in the comments when you say, Paul, you talk too much. I know this, man. I know everything that anybody's ever said about me. I already know that. You're not giving me an epiphany. I know I've got the gift of gab. I know I'm redundant. I know I go over things over and over again, right? I get it. I know that you think I'm not an electrician because I never got my hands dirty, which that would be wrong because all you'd have to do is Google that, okay? But all of that's available up there, so I just want you to know that we're rolling out that what's called Fast Trax Plus, okay? So check that out if you're interested in that or if you're on the fence. And I will tell you, anybody that gets the Fast Trax program now, all you got to do is when you order it, all you've got to do is in the comments state that you want to get the plus. And so anybody that orders now, and I guess what we say now is July 10th, then you just make that statement and I will make sure that you're upgraded when that comes out. Okay. So make that type of thing. Amuda, thank you. He said he used the Fast Trax program to pass the MD state exam. You are most welcome. You are most, hold on, you are most welcome. I'm glad. I mean, we can have such an amazing success rate with this Fast Trax program, and it's not brain surgery. It's taking you and trying to tell you what you used to know, put it on the back burner, move through the 19 units. If you have any questions of anything confusing you, it's a reading program, okay? It's not built up of videos and podcasts, okay? That would be the easy thing, and we're adding videos. But the Fast Trax is trying to test your comprehension. You need to be able to read it and understand it so that when you're taking an exam, you can dissect a question. You can really understand. That's our approach to it. It might be different than somebody else, but that's how we do it, and that's how our success rate is so high. You don't see people saying they failed using our program if they follow the program, okay? I can't help you if you don't follow the program, okay? But this wasn't a commercial for the Fast Trax. But again, thank you, Amuda. I always love to hear success stories because I live vicariously through students, and I love seeing them being successful. So that's an amazing thing. Okay. So then I just want to let people know about that. The next thing I want to mention is that if you haven't done it yet, again, make sure you download the app. You can get the app, which gives you access to me, which gives you access to podcasts, easy access, gives you access to the Sparky Hub. If you're a Fast Trax member, it gives you access to the Fast Trax Black forum. It allows you to look at videos. People were asking us to do that for a long time. So we've natively now part of the app. You can do that. Also, if you download the app, and you put it on your phone, I can also send push notices to you. So sometimes I'll do a little tip or I'll let you know about something and I'll send it to you. And as long as you have the app on your phone, you'll get that notice. So it kind of keeps you in touch. If I find something I want to share, I get to share it directly. So those come straight from me. So that's just another feature in the app, and you don't pay for that. That's free. Now, where do you go to get the app? I'll go on and type it in the chat so that you know, but it's at www.necchat.com. Now, the NEC stands for National Electrical Collective, because we're putting together all of our videos, all of our podcasts in one repository, and that's how we're now sharing everything through this collective, right? And over on Electrician Live, we have also added a podcast from a guy that's all he does is when he does PV and energy storage systems. And he has Bill Brooks, who is a noted expert, okay, on PV, right, and energy storage. He's one of his guests all the time. And so if you haven't listened to that podcast, or you're big into PV, or you're big into energy storage, check that out over on electricianlive.com, because we've added that podcast and it's a great podcast. Really good information. Far more of an expert on PV than I would ever be. I can walk you through the code, and I've only done a handful of PV installations in my career. Never done gigawatt type of PV systems, big, huge systems, 691 type systems. Never done that. These folks have, and I encourage you to listen to that podcast. While I'm at it, and I will put the address to the app that you can download, because you can get it from our website, but you can also get it from our portal that we have set up at www.necchat.com. I'll type that in a minute. But also over on Electrician Live, you can actually also listen to the Basement Kings podcast, Kicking It with the King. So that is up there as well. So if you're interested in your electrical contractor, and you want to do some listening to type of electrical contractor type of podcast, then Kicking It with the King with our own Jay Grunberg, it has that, and it's going great. So it's an awesome podcast, so check that out. All right, let me go on and type in real quick so I can get this out of the way. And this is where you go download the app, okay? So that's where you're going to go and get the app if you're interested in the app for us. Okay. All right. So let's go on and get into today's topic, because again, I've kind of dragged you out, and I just don't remember. It is coffee hour, right? So at least I'm here for an hour. So I got to fill an hour, right? All right. So let's talk about it. So one of the big things and I posted this on TikTok, is people are making comments, and I don't share all the comments on there because some of them are just snarky. But the ones I do share so that I can comment on them, because to me, I've got to try to do it in 3 minutes. And so it's kind of difficult. So I like follow-up questions. And if it's a good question, you're not just being an a-hole, then I will probably allow it, and then I will give you a comment. People said, stop commenting, just teach. You can't. You're obviously not an educator. You've got 3 minutes. 3 minutes. So I try to share what I can, and then I elaborate on it if people have questions. That's the only way I can do that platform. It's not like these platforms and the other social medias that I do. But the question comes up about the nameplate and inspectors. And one of the people said that, yep, we all know this as an electrician. We all know how to do the nameplate. It's the inspectors who have a problem with it and cause a problem. So we just, paraphrasing, we just bow down to them and do what they want. Okay? That should never take place, okay? So one of the things that you can do as an electrician is, if the inspector's willing to learn, and again, if you remember my message at the beginning, if they're willing to learn, then you can show them what aspects of the code are relevant for the creation of that nameplate on that outside air conditioning unit, because you have a condensing fan and you have a hermetic refrigerant motor compressor. And so you've got two motors. Okay, you got the hermetic refrigerant, or the HERM, and you've got that, and you got the condensing fan. Okay, so you've got a motor that you're going to take at 125%. That's the HERM, and then you're going to take the condensing fan at 100%, or its sum, and you're going to see how that creates the nameplate. For most people, they'll say, why do you even need to go into all that? Why don't you just follow the nameplate? And that would be true. That would be true. Just follow the nameplate. However, the reason I explain it is if you ever were to have an issue where the inspector requires and says, no, that's a 50 amp breaker, even though it might say the conductor only has to be a 10 gauge, but that's a 50 amp breaker, I want you to install conductors that are good for 50 amps. And you're like, I could do that, and that would be okay because you can always go larger, right? But why? And wouldn't it be better to follow the nameplate? Now, people say, yeah, but you can always go above code. It's true. If you want to go out and spend your money and buy conductors that are rated for 50 amps to put on a 50 amp breaker, hey, go for it. There's no problem with that. I don't have any problem with that. In fact, I work for a wire and cable manufacturer. Hey, always go bigger. I'm fine with that. Okay, more copper, the better. But as far as following the code, it is a minimum standard. But it also shows you how the manufacturers derive that nameplate. And it might be good to have a conversation with the electrical inspector. They want to learn too, trust me. Except for the ones that have a God complex, which we need to weed out of the industry anyway. The ones that really care, which is the good inspectors who really do want to do a good job. And I know they're overloaded, but they really want to do a good job. They're willing to learn, okay? And maybe you're the one as the electrician that's going to teach them, right? It's your opportunity to be the educator. Whether you like it or not, this is a good opportunity for you, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at a nameplate that's a sticker that's on an HVAC unit, just a random one that I pulled off the internet. And we're going to kind of look at it and see how this thing is derived. And the hope is that we do it in a way that you don't just point at the nameplate and say, Mr. Inspector, you're wrong. You follow this nameplate, but you can explain why. And that's what we're going to do in this episode. So again, I'll tell you in advance. Now, if you already know all this and you're an electrician and you don't feel like you need to see any of this, I've appreciated you coming up to this point. And thank you. Hopefully the other information was beneficial to you. I will say before you leave, if you want to come and join us on the Sparky Hub, that's our social media platform. We love to have you knowledgeable electricians on our forum. And share the love and interact back and forth. We have great people over there. Great people. If you're interested in our Fast Tracks program, again, check it out. And got any questions? There's a demo on the Fast Tracks page. Watch that demo, and it'll kind of give you a little bit of an insight on what the course is all about, okay? All right. So now let's move on to the people that are interested in moving forward. Everybody else is probably left if you're ready to move forward. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go and look at a nameplate here. So ID plate here on the side. This is a train unit. I have a love-hate relationship with a train. I have a train. In fact, the video on TikTok is my label from my train, okay, which was installed in 2016. And I've had problems with it ever since. So I kind of, got a bad taste in my mouth for train. But again, they are a premium unit. I get it. And I might have got a lemon. Although I was able to befriend a really good HVAC guy. The company's called Ideal Air, and they're here in McKinney, Texas. And that dude is a master. Okay, so check them out. It's Ideal Air in McKinney, Texas. If you happen to live in northern Texas, that dude will do you right. And I know contractors. I spent my whole career teaching them, mentoring them, training them. Yes, he's an HVAC guy, but he listens to my podcasts as well. He is one of those guys that you can just tell cares about what he does, right? And that's what you really want. You want a contractor that really cares, not just after the buck. We still got to pay the bills, but he cares. And that's hard to find, okay? So those contractors stand out when you find one. All right, let's look at this one right here. So this is a unit. You can find this one online as well. It's very easy to find. So let's look at this. And of course, it has a box around the overcurrent protection. I guess I'll do some shout outs real quick in the room. John, welcome. Amuda, I got you there. Elwood from California. That's not too awful early in California. Orlando. Let's see here. Let's see if there's anybody else in the room. I love when you guys shout out. Let me know where you're from. I have a love to yell out at you. Anthony was first one in here. Again, Anthony's taking his master's tomorrow. focus, okay? Only answer what they give you. Make sure you read the question. Take your time and really dissect what they're asking you, okay? All right, just focus. Follow the 3-wave method and you'll be fine. If not, you know I'm still here. Come to me. You know, for those that fail an exam, it's not the end of the world. You'll nail it the next time, I promise. But if you nail it on the first time, woo! If you need a little more assistance, it's okay. It's not the easiest exam in the world, okay? Every state's a little different. But if you focus, you'll get it. And it's a huge accomplishment, okay? There's no better trade, in my opinion, in the world than being an electrician. No better trade. And I'm not saying anything about plumbers or HVAC. I'm just saying, not because I teach electricians, but because I've been an electrician since the 80s. It's just the most amazing trade. And that's why I do what I do, okay? I'm not here to bend conduit anymore. I'm not here to crawl in crawl spaces. Getting too damn old for that. But I am here to give what knowledge I can give to folks, to teach the mental part of being an electrician. It's kind of like a brain surgeon. You become a general doctor, and then you have to study to be a brain surgeon. I'm helping you become an electrical brain surgeon, right? That's why I teach code. I can't teach you how to bend conduit. I can't teach you how to do an install. I've done all that in my career, right? I can't teach you that, but I can help you get better at code, and it's going to make you a much better electrician. So hate me, love me, haters, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to teach you. I'm still going to try to teach you, okay? So again, you know, if you don't learn anything from me, there's plenty of other people that can teach you. Don't have to be me. I'm just saying. Welcome, Joe, from over on the Facebook side, watching us on Facebook. So thank you for joining me. All right. John says, I finally gave them enough money and they passed me. Sometimes it's what it is, man. Keep taking it. You know, that type of thing. So, all right. So let's look at this nameplate real quick and then we'll see how it's derived. So one thing that I tell people, and this is to convey to the inspector, and inspectors are here with us, it says minimum circuit ampacity. Now you kind of see it obscured by the yellow line on the screen, but it's 34 amperes, right? So we have to have a branch circuit that has a capacity at a minimum of 34 amperes, right? Now, a couple things that we need to take into consideration, right, at this stage of the game. What are our terminals? What is the rating of the conductors we're using? All those things come into consideration. If this was a commercial application and you're probably running MC or you're running EMT and you're coming to your disconnect and that type of thing, then you're probably going to have terminals that are rated 75 degrees C, and you're probably going to have a conductor that has an insulation that's at least 75 degrees C. Because you know, right now the most common wire that anybody would use in building wiring is THHN, THWN-2s, dual rated. Okay. In a dry location, you use THHN. In a wet location, you would use, it would be the THWN. But since it has a -2, the 90 degree can be used for adjustment and correction purposes, whether it's wet or dry at 90. But the key thing here is we have to know whether or not we use the 60 degree ampacity or we use the 75 degree ampacity. And again, it's going to be based on the weakest link. If I were to have an installation and I don't know what the terminals are rated for, I have no clue what they're rated for, then I'm going to remember that the terminal limitations in 110.14c is going to tell me that if it's 100 amps or less, okay, or it's 1 gauge down to 14 gauge, then I'm going to be in the 60 degree column when I'm choosing an ampacity. If I'm over 100 amps, okay, or I'm 2 gauge and larger, then I'm going to be using the 75, right? Now, the one thing about the 110.14C1A one is that, or C1A, is that if my terminals are rated 75, if my wires insulation is rated 75 or greater, then I can ignore the fact that the ampacity is under 100 amps and I can still use the 75 degree column. Okay, so generally that would be okay. Now, the only caveat to that is if in residential, let's say, what if I'm running a non-metallic sheath cable through the building and then I'm going to the disconnect, right? And if that's the case, then you've got to remember that in 334.80, it's going to limit you to 60 degree, right? So it's so important, one, as an electrician, to know your terminals, right? Because you want to use the 75 if you can, right? But it's so important to know those terminals. It's so important to know the wiring method you're using. Because again, wiring methods have limitations, right? So all those things have to be taken into consideration. And that's why electricians get paid the big bucks, right? So when the inspector comes out there, they might look at the wiring method you're taking to this unit, and you might have done 75-degree Ampacity Table, but then they noticed that you use non-metallic sheath cable to supply the disconnect, and they might go, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't exceed the 60. Now, I can use the 90 for adjustment and corrections because the conductors inside of non-metallic sheath cable are rated 90. You just can't use a 90 except for if you're adjusting or correcting for ambient temperature or if you're bundling and things like that. So for all intents and purposes, you can't exceed the 60, right? So it's so important to know your installation, okay? So in this case, let's just say that we're running, MC cable, and we're running it and we're connecting it. And so, and we can't cover all scenarios. So I know there's always somebody that's going to say, well, if it penetrates through the wall, then it's outside and you can't run MC cable outside unless it's PVC jacketed, or you penetrate the wall and non-metallic sheet cable is outside now and it can't be out. There's always variables. It's just like that video that I posted about the cables coming into the back of that enclosure over on TikTok, that bundle through a TA. I know what the code says, and I just gave you what the code said. Reality is, there are many cases when that might be the only option you have, and that's why the jurisdiction works with you, and you can plausibly defend that, okay, in court. Most of the time, when people come out of through the wall and penetrate and go into the disconnect, that type of thing, they're going to follow all the code rules, and based on the conditions of use, they're going to install it to that disconnect properly. We just need to know which wire method they're using so that we know whether or not we're going to be in the 75 or 60-degree column for our ampacity. Okay, so that's a lot of info, but we want to focus back on this nameplate now. So again, if we don't know what the terminals are rated, or we're feeding it with non-metallic sheath cable, that type of thing, then we're going to be limited to the 60-degree. If we're using, if we're going to use like an SE cable to it, okay, depending on the manufacturer and depending on the size of the conductors for this, then you might be able to use 75, or you might have to use 60 if it's of the smaller size, even SE cable. And you'll find that in 338, okay? So anyway, let's assume we've done all this. 34 amperes is the minimum circuit ampacity, okay? The minimum ampacity that we have to have. Can I have a conductor that goes over that? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it can't be less than 34 amps in this case with this nameplate right here, right? Okay. Now, we're going to size all this, but we just want to continue our little work around this. And you got to bear with me because my vision is just getting awful. These glasses are just terrible. They're trifocals, and I think they're just no focal, if you ask me. So now let's look at the yellow box. So this says an overcurrent protected device, maximum fuse / breaker. Of course, this says HACR. So this is heating and air conditioning rated breaker. It allows for that inrush that can come in and it won't arbitrarily trip. So it has that built into it. Regardless, the key here is that it says maximum fuse or circuit breaker. Interesting enough is if this only said max fuse, then you could only protect these circuit with fuses, right? But here it gives both fuse and circuit breaker, so it doesn't really matter, okay? So even if the disconnect, which is nothing more than the disconnecting means that's required in 440, is right next to the air conditioning unit, okay? The actual overcurrent protection is back in the panel, and that can be a fuse or circuit breaker. And I think probably we'd all agree that today it's going to be a circuit breaker, okay? Now that does not mean that you can't have overcurrent protection at the disconnect. Perfectly okay to have that if you'd like, okay? But it's just really not required. The disconnect is required, but you still have to have the overcurrent protection on the circuit itself, right? So here's where things start to go a little bit screwy for sometimes for some inspectors here. They see that I have to have a conductor that's at least 34 amperes, but they see this overcurrent protection at 60. And they're thinking, wait a minute, I've always been taught that you protect a conductor at its ampacity. That's true. You are 100% right. But there are allowances, and we protect conductors in what? Article 240, right? That's overcurrent protection for conductors. So we always protect it at its ampacity. But you remember we have what's called small conductor rules, and that's when you look at the ampacities in 31016, and you'll see a little asterisk right next to the 14, the 12, and the 10. And if you go to the bottom, it tells you that, oh, hey, I see that you're looking at the ampacities of this table. And I see that a 10 gauge under the 75 degree column is good for 35 amps. I see that, Mr. Electrician. But you see this little asterisk? It's reminding you that 240.4D, the small conductor rules for general applications, are going to limit you to 30 amps on a 10 gauge. So you're going to protect it at 30 amps. Okay, so that's what those small conductor rules, and you know what? For all normal applications, that's 100% correct. 100% correct. So here's where it kind of gets wonky for some of them. They don't feel comfortable with a conductor rated for 34 amps, right? They don't feel comfortable with it being terminated onto, in this case, a 60 amp overcurrent protective device. Now, for 34 amps minimum circuit ampacity, if you go over and you look at 310.16, you'll see that a 10 gauge under the 75 degree column, okay, and we're going to assume here in our case for this example that all the terminals are rated 75. The breakers terminals are usually 60/75. We're always going to use 75. That's the most common wire we use today, okay? Remembering that non-metallic sheet cable issue has to stay at 60, okay? That's why the breaker has multiple slash ratings on it. But in our case, let's say it's all 75, keep it simple, stupid, and we're using THHN, THWN-2 in our installation, then I could use a 10 gauge because it's good for 35 amps. And remember something, 310.16, this is, sometimes people lose sight of this, the ampacity values that are in that table, they are for continuous loads. Yeah, under the 75 degree column, that 35 amps, I could pull 35 amps continuously for indefinitely and never violate the rating of the insulation on that conductor, right? Never going to have a problem with it. Why? Well, because it's designed and tested that way. And it has a certain temperature rise at a certain load inherent with the resistance. And it's all been factored out for you. Now, I will tell you that the Ampacity tables in 31016 have been around a long time and they haven't had much modification. It hasn't been something that us manufacturers of wire and cable want to touch. It has not been something the code panel wants to touch. Why? Because it would be a massive amount of testing that's involved in it. And who's paying for that? It's not in our best interest as a manufacturer to pay for it, right? So who's willing to do all the testing and then submit it to the code panel and then have them scrutinize it? And the only way that you're going to get it approved is if you substantiate it, okay? I love one of the TikTok videos where somebody said to me that, yeah, you know, all of those code making panel folks are get kickbacks. And I told him, I said, dude, I'm still waiting for my kickback then because I've been on a code panel for a while now and I ain't seen a dime from it. It's a voluntary process. It takes me away from my family. It's 2 weeks that we have to go. And, you know, I don't care to fly anywhere anymore. I'm kind of over that now. I don't even travel around the country as much as I used to teaching, as I'm kind of over the travel part. But at the end of the day, it takes you away from your family. So people think, well, you're still getting paid. Dude, I'd get paid whether I was at work or I'm on the road. I'm just saying. So again, I could take it or leave it. The reason I participate in it is because I want to feel like I contribute to the code development process to make the code better, easier to understand. Now, am I here to say that manufacturers don't have any influence in the development of the NEC? No, I'd be a fool because I see it all the time. At least I see them trying to do it. And a lot of times the rest of the code making panels won't buy into it. They see it. It's very blatant. It's very obvious, right? A lot of that has to do with GFCI expansion, and AFCI expansion, and the people crying at the mic saying, a lot of people are going to die. Yeah, that's pandering. I get it. And then they want you to accept something simply because it's the code has had the devices in there forever. And so when they come up with a new location, they're just like, well, it's been in there forever. And then people just stamp it with a rubber stamp, kind of like unfinished basements and finished basements. I can see the need in an unfinished basement. Maybe, again, I had a little debate on TikTok with a guy. I was really just teasing him and trying to egg him on. Reality is, he says that a basement requires GFCI because it's a damp location, and I quoted him saying that. I think what he really meant to say was because of the concrete and the moisture, that concrete holds moisture, the curing process, and all that, and you could be barefoot and all this kind of stuff. I get it. Same kind of thing for the garage, right? Or really in the garage, you spill liquids, fluids from vehicles, and all that kind of other stuff. But at the end of the day, the moment that the code panel changed it to finished and unfinished spaces, yes, you can have a concrete floor in a finished space. That's the in vogue thing to do. But even if they put carpet down and they gypsum the walls and did everything, you still are required to have GFCI devices in the basement. So I kind of don't agree with that. But again, I have no problem with GFCIs. And if they save a life, wonderful. And they are proven technology, proven. So I don't have a problem with that. I'm not gonna argue all that. So anyway, I kind of digressed from it. So the point being is that thinking that the code panel is just sitting there trying to make the code book thicker, and that nothing but manufacturers influence it. That's I really get tired of having to explain that to people. I feel like I'm that person carrying that torch for the code panel, because there's other people in the panel that won't say anything because they don't like to get into controversy. They don't put themselves out there. Everybody knows I don't mind doing that. Okay, I don't mind it if you like me or hate me or call me an a-hole or whatever. I don't care. And I've been known to sit on committees and call people out in the committee. It's not because I'm an a-hole. It's because I don't like bullshit. And so if somebody's trying to pull smoke over something, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if you're trying to blow smoke over something and you're not substantiated, then I'm gonna be the first one to call out. So for people to say that all code making panel members are sellouts or take kickbacks, or their only mission is to expand the code for their products, they don't know me very well, and they haven't been following me very long. Now, does that happen? Yeah, but it's not the norm. I can tell you that. All right, so that was enough of that. So anyhow, if you're looking, we're back to I told you I got ADHD. I can go anywhere. Look at this nameplate. So we're okay. So it's a 60 amp device, and it's protecting a conductor that has a rating of 35 amperes, but it actually can handle this minimum circuit ampacity. So where is that in the code? We got to go look at the code to kind of dig this out, because I want to explain all these things to the people that might be watching that are still not comfortable with it. Now, I know you're comfortable with it, but they might not be comfortable with it. So let's start out with the first thinking. So where is it in the code that manufacturers, and it might be hard to see, so you can go to your own code book, where is it in the code that the manufacturers get the information to determine how to size the overcurrent protection, right? All right, so we're gonna look at that. Now I'm gonna make sure I get to my code book here so I can adequately see what's going on here. All right, so here we are right here, and 440.22a, right here in your code book, okay? Here's where you say that the motor compressor, branch circuit, short circuit, and ground fault protection, okay, that's your overcurrent protected device, shall be capable of carrying starting current of the motor, right? So that's the first reason that your circuit breaker has a rating that's higher than what the ampacity is of the conductor, okay? That's your first thing, all right? It also says, a protected device having a rating or setting not exceeding 175% of the motor compressor rated load current or the branch circuit selected current, whichever is greater, shall be permitted, provided where the protection specified is not sufficient for the starting current of the motor, the rating and setting shall be permitted to be increased but it can exceed 225%. Okay, now, when the manufacturers do this, they test their equipment. They know that, remember, electricity is electricity, right? I mean, let's establish that. So they're using the electricity wherever they are, and they test their equipment. And they're going to start this thing. They're cycling these things, and they will get an understanding of how that develops their nameplate. So typically, they don't have a reason to exceed the 175% for that overcurrent protection. Okay? They don't have a need to it. So, and it says not to exceed it. So if they were to take the load, that, let's say that 34 amps, and they take that 34 times 1.75, and was it 34? Hold on, let's see. Let me go back, and I don't want to take you away from it. I can't remember exactly what that was. So let me go back real quick and look at the load. I'm sorry, I have trouble sometimes with that. Oh, it was 34 amps, okay? All right, so let's go back. And like I said, so let's go back here. Let me make sure I'm on you real quick. Sorry about that. I have so many screens open. So they might utilize the allowance and say, well, not to exceed 175%. So they took that 34, okay, and they did that, and they times 1.75, and that is 59.5. So they round that to 60, okay? But you're saying that exceeds the 175, right? Well, in their testing, maybe it did exceed that, right? So I tell people this, don't get into, this is how it's derived, right? But they have the ability based on their testing to not exceed 175, or if they see that there's a problem, then they can go up to 225%, right? That's their prerogative, okay, that they do that. Now, I want to go down real quick and look at where we get the conductor sizing, right? Now, remember this, because this is important to remember. When it comes to the branch circuits, right, that we're talking about, when they're doing the branch circuits, remember part 4, because you're going to need to know that in a minute when we go look at the small conductor rules and we look at what allows us to get here in 440 in part 4 and ampacities and all that. So you're going to need to remember this when you get there. But we've already dealt with how they derive the overcurrent protection. And again, that's on the manufacturer, and be blessed that they provide you with a nameplate. That makes it easy. But now we go look and see, well, what about sizing those branch circuits, and what do they typically use? Well, they typically use 440.32 if it's a single motor compressor, or they use 440.33. Now, if it's a single motor compressor, which you might have a single motor compressor, but you have other loads like the condensing fan, okay? So you take the motor compressor at whatever the FLA, because that's coming off the piece of equipment. You're not going to any table. You pull that, and they go, okay, well, I take the FLA that's on the nameplate for the hermetic refrigerant motor compressor, and I do that at 125%, as it says here. But then 440.33 says, look, if you happen to have additional motor loads, like in our case, we have a condensing fan, then we want to take that additional load, and it is a motor, so theoretically it also kicks in the 430 requirements. So you take the largest motor at 125%, which we kind of did that with your hermetic or the herm, and then we take that other motor compressor and we take it at 100% because they are in the same group, okay? It's the same set of branch circuits supplying power, right? See how it all kind of goes together? And that's how we come up with that minimum circuit ampacity on that nameplate, okay? We'll look at that again to verify the nameplate, but that's how they do it. So for conductors, they're using 440.32 or 440.33 as necessary, and 440.30, what was it? They got 22 for sizing the overcurrent protection, okay? All right, so we make sure I've got so many screens. So yes, so we go back here. They're using this for the protection right here. All right, you got your general rules, and then it goes on to tell you, okay? All right, and also it reminds you right here that they are in addition to or a mandatory to Article 240. So that's what we're going to be amending, and that's how we can do it. And so this ends up being where people struggle. We're allowed to do this, and it reminds you in part 3, and it reminds you in part 4 what we're doing, okay? But let's go look at the small conductor rules. because that's, again, where people can get really lost. And we want to make sure we're going to eyeball those and see what's going on. So I'm going to go here to 240, and we're going to be looking at 240.4D. Okay, so this is what you should see on the screen. So we know what we've discussed up to this point. But now let's talk about those small conductor rules. And you heard me talk about it. So traditionally, when we've got those conductors, what do we got? What are we dealing with? All right, well, if it is a 14 gauge copper, then you protect it at 15 amps. Ready? Straightforward. If it is a 12 gauge copper, protect it at 20 amps. This is what you're going to do for all of your general purpose branch circuits. You're going to do this for your small appliance branch circuits. You're going to follow these rules for your laundry circuit. You're going to follow all these rules. It's normal, right? But when we get down here to the one that we're talking about, which is the 10 gauge copper, which we saw was good for 35 amps under the 75 because all of our conductors as well as the terminals were rated 75. Remember, if they're not, don't forget the 110.14c1 rules, and you would use the 60 degree column, okay? Go back and watch that, and if you didn't get that when I talked about it. So 30 amps is what it has to be protected at, okay? That 10 gauge. Now, this is normal, right? We do this for the water heaters, right? We do this for a lot of other things where we know that the 10 gauge has got to be protected by a 30 amp overcurrent device, okay? So people at that point say, Paul, well, then how are you getting out of this for those small conductor rules? Well, that's when we have to go back up here and look at the small conductor rule charging statement right here, okay? So this charging statement says, unless specifically permitted in 240.4E or G, okay? Now, of course, E is talking about allowances tap conditions, where when the whole purpose of a tap is where you may have a conductor tapping another conductor, and you're not putting overcurrent protection at the location of the tap. But as long as you follow these rules that are specific here, and this is interesting to have this all here, so this helps you if you ever knew that this is where you're going to get that. This is great for single motor taps, fixture wire, things like that. There's one, for example, household ranges and cooking equipment where you might bring a single branch in and you get to tap off of it, say one going to the oven and one going to the cooktop. So again, information here, kind of guidelines to tell you where to go. But we're going to focus on G, because G is the one that for motors, for HVAC equipment, this is the one that says, you know what? Ignore those small conductor rules. It's okay. It's okay. Let's go to G. And so that's where you have to direct the inspector. You have to say, look, it's saying that I can go to G. Now, you remember those rules we looked at in 440? Part 3 and Part 4? Well, here's your air conditioning, refrigeration, circuit conductors, right? Here's 440, and here's Part 3, right, for that application, right? So, and in this case, you didn't use Part 4 because that's the circuit breaker. But for conductor sizing, you have Part 3 and you have Part 6 that are going to address that say, you know what? Forget about the small conductor rules. Go and follow the rules like we just did for sizing the branch circuit conductors for it. And that's what the manufacturers utilize, and that's why they use those allowances, okay? Now, for those that ask for motors, it's the same concept, right? So we have motors right here, and you have all these different parts that will make references to conductors, and you're able to load them differently under those motor rules in 430 than you would under the small conductor rules in 240.4D. So it's a beautiful thing, but don't forget there's other ones in here that take advantage of G, okay? And this is dealing with specific conductors for specific applications, okay? Not the general practice. Okay, for those branch circuits supplying your bedroom or your living room or your kitchen, or those you follow the small conductor rules. But here you're able to use this table and be able to do that. And that's what allows you to be able to deviate from those small conductor rules. Okay, makes sense? All right, and then last thing I will show you is the Ampacity Table. I'm sure you all are way familiar with it. It's probably the most popular used table in the NEC. So we're going to go look at it real quick, just so we all see it. Say that, Paul, you didn't cover all of it. Okay, well, I will. I don't want to get my haters all wound up because, So here's 31016. And we used 75 because we were using THHN and THWN-2. But again, we knew that the terminals were limited to what? Well, the terminals were limited to 75. Okay, so we're going to be stuck here. All right. Now, because THHN and THWN-2 actually has an insulation rated 90, if we had any conditions of use, like more than 3 current carrying conductors or an elevated ambient temperature above 30 degrees Celsius and 86 degrees Fahrenheit, then we could use the ampacity from the 90, do an adjustment and correction, and as long as we don't exceed the value under the 75 column, and as long as the conductor itself still has enough ampacity to handle the load, then we're okay. If it doesn't, we go to the next size conductor, right? And that's all covered in another video I do called Rating Demystified, which guess what? There's a 2.0, and now I'm in the process of recording a 3.0. Yes, I am updating that video as well, and it will be available for folks soon whenever I finish that, okay? All right, so just remember, if we don't know the terminals, then we would have been down here. So if it was a 34 amps, like we said, minimum circuit ampacity under the C, then it would have been an 8 gauge, right? Because good for 40. If it was, again, we said everything was 75, then as you can see here, it was 34, so the 12 is not going to work. So we would have used the 35 amp, and that's where you get the 10, and that's that little asterisk, and that just simply reminds you down here of those small conductor rules, and we learned that you can ignore that if you're using 240.4 G, right? Okay, pretty straightforward. The only other thing I'll show you before I get off of this and go back and close this episode out, because I know y'all are tired of listening to me on a Sunday. I do appreciate you taking the time to do that. I don't think many people really do not. And I joke on TikTok and I tease people and I'll argue. I don't think that most people realize how much I do appreciate the time that you take out of your day away from your family watching the videos. And I'm hoping that I teach you something. If you hate me and you're still watching my videos, bless your heart. If you feel like you don't learn anything from me, well, it's okay. There's plenty of other educators out there. You're more than happy to go listen to them, and I hope they teach you something. But if you do appreciate it, I would love a thumbs up. That would be great, and I would love you to share it and be fanatical about it and be habitual. Means make sure that you watch as many videos as you can, because I'm here to teach you. One of the other tables I will tell you that can be your friend, just go throw this one out there as a little bonus, is this one right here in the code book. This is 310.4a. If you're in the 2017 code, it's 310.104a. If you ever have a question in your mind what the rating is of the insulation of a conductor used for building wiring, because that's what this is for. This is for use in building wire. And again, it's rated 600 volt rated wire. Then if you look down here, you can learn a lot about this table, right? So when I tell people all the time, for example, XHHW, people see those two H's and it's high heat. So in THHN, yeah, two H's means high heat, 90 degree rated insulation in a dry location. But what about when it's the THWN in a wet location? Yes, it only has one H, so that should tell you it's 75. But what happens in like XHHW? You're like, well, wait a minute, that's got a W, right? So it's got two H's, right? So it's got to be, insulation's got to be rated for 90 in a wet location, right? That would make sense, right? Sounds like it makes sense. Well, let's look at it real quick. And I just wanted to do that little lesson here for you. So here's XHHW. It happens to have two H's, which we like to refer to as high heat, which is usually corresponds with the 90 degree rated insulation. Remember, you're always going to be limited to terminals, but I'm just talking about reading the insulation and why this table might be a friend to you. Here you see it's 90, but that only applies to dry and damp locations. If it is a wet location, it is only rated for 75 degrees C. So those people taking exams, and this isn't an exam prep type of coffee hour, be very careful of the insulation type that they give you on an exam, okay? Because this is still XHHW, but if it's dry or damp, 90. If it's wet, 75. And that's going to make a huge difference when you're doing an adjustment where you're looking at no, a correction where you're looking at the ambient temperature that's other than 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, right? That's going to be huge because when you pull that multiplier, you can only pull from the column that correlates with the insulation's rating, right? So that's what you're worried about there. So here you see that it's 90, and then of course 75. Now down here, look at this one. This is XHHW-2. Notice that it's rated 90 for a dry and wet location. This -2 is super uber significant. Why? Because it's basically telling you that I understand this wire's insulation has 2 different potential temperature ratings depending on their conditions of use. But if I'm going to have it evaluated and I put that -2 on it, that means that I can ignore the fact it's wet or dry or damp, and I know that that insulation is rated for 90 degrees C, right? So that's an important thing to remember. So that's one of the beneficial things here in using it. Also, when you want to know a little bit of the difference of the conductors and things like this, I just throw this out there because I don't know what the time is left on my coffee hour. I'm probably over an hour. Okay, so I'm going to cut it short here. I don't want to take your whole day. But that N means nylon. The X means cross-link polyethylene or cross-linking. Okay, a cross-linked polymer means the polymers are actually entwined. It adds rigidity to the product. Whereas a thermal set, which would be like a T for thermoplastic, that is malleable. Means if it gets hot, it can melt. You really don't get melting with thermoplastic. With thermoset. Think of the set. It's like a birthday cake. Once you mix all the ingredients, it's never going to be anything other than a birthday cake. Whereas thermoplastic, think of it as a Hershey bar. If you melt it, you can mold it into anything, right? So that's kind of the differences. So the end's nylon. So over here, it tells you what kind of covering it has on it, whether it has any covering or it doesn't have any covering, right? So kind of lets you know that thing. TW is very common to be used as an equivalency in non-metallic sheath cable. But you notice it doesn't require a covering. No nylon's required on the actual insulated conductor. But if you use THHN, which also is very commonly the equivalent used in non-metallic sheath cable, it will have nylon on it, and that's what the N stands for. All right, so that's kind of what all these things here. But you can learn a lot from this table. All right, so one of those ones to just get familiar with. But all of these insulation types are a green light for use in building wiring. Okay, so now they have their own little nuances you have to follow, and they have their own rules. And you go to 310, and you can learn different things about that. But just kind of like MTW, machine tool wire. A lot of the manufacturers, their products are multi-rated or quad-rated. I mean, they can cover THHN, THWN-2, MTW, maybe AWM, appliance wire, things like that. Interesting that MTW can have a nylon covering, or it can have no covering, okay? And it's going to have different ratings depending, okay? And you see it's going to have different thicknesses, okay? So just kind of some interesting things to think about, all right? All right, I got a question. I don't know if this is a question, but I'll read it. Joseph says, one issue I've encountered is when using LMNC, I think you probably see LFMC, right? Liquidite metallic LF, liquidite flexible metal conduit, probably, because I guess that's what you mean. LMC, I don't know. It says the temperature marking on the raceway is only 6 degrees C in a wet location, so use caution when going to a 75-degree location. That is so true. So I think a lot of people also forget that with raceways as well. They forget that with PVC. They forget that with LFMC or LFNC, that you also have raceways that have temperature ratings on it, right? So you have to be careful with that. And I'm probably going to have an upcoming video explaining all of that, the limitations of the raceway. You can't have a raceway that's at a certain temperature and then load it with conductors that exceed that temperature rating and then expect to use them at that rating. Probably something I'll do in the future. Probably not a coffee hour, but it'll be a video that's part of my exclusive video series because we have so many new videos scheduled. Let me come back to me real quick. Let me see if I'm back to me real quick. Yeah, so we have so many videos that I've got planned on all types of little things. In fact, I had a new video system come in. I've got new cameras that we're going to be using for some field stuff. So I'm going to be doing some videos in the field. Be doing some work myself and videotaping it and explaining things like how overcurrent devices really work and things that you look for. Maybe if you're a service electrician, looking for the gapping and understanding gapping and what can happen. Different things, MC cable, terminating it and whatnot. There'll be a bunch of stuff that I've got new video cameras in and a lot of other equipment, new mic systems and all that I've introduced into our company's repertoire, I guess that's what you say. So look for that to come. So hopefully you subscribe to the channel. And even if you're a hater, hey, I still love you. Come on here and subscribe. But at the end of the day, hopefully you get something out of these videos and these trainings and these live streams. If you like the live streams again, and you like when I do these coffee hours, come on, give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. And share it with other people. If you got electricians that are in your company, why not share the videos with them? Better yet, and I'm not going to endorse this, but, well, I will. Go on and buy our monthly subscription and get access to all of our videos, and then share them, share your access with your other people. Again, see, I'm not all about the money. I just want people to learn. So if you do that, and I don't know any different, I don't know if you get a monthly subscription and you set up a generic account and then you share it with all the employees. I don't know any different, right? So it doesn't hurt me. I mean, I appreciate if you buy them and support me, but I don't control, and I'm not out there to police it. But the point is, now I do with the Fast Tracks because we track the IP addresses. Can't do that. But when it comes to the monthly subscription thing, I just want people to learn, and that's it, right? So anyway, or maybe you have a training session in your company and get all your guys together and then stream our training to a screen or a monitor and let all your guys come in and get some training. If you have anything you want me to do a podcast on or a video on or some training on, do me a favor. Look, all you got to do is reach out to me. Send me an email, say what kind of training you think would be great, and I will try my best to work it in. Because now that we've got all the equipment that we need, all the switchers that we need, everything is where I need it to be, I can start producing stuff that I think can help people. And I've been doing this for over 30 years. So if I can help you, I'm here to try. Again, that's the best I can do. So at the end of the day, folks, that's all I've got. Dude, I really appreciate you all coming. Hope you got something out of this. If you already knew it all, then hey, thank you for sharing your time with me as well. All of you in the stream. Ray, I see you. Matthew, I see you. Joseph, I see you. Elwood, I see you. All of y'all. John, okay, all of you. I appreciate you all. You all are amazing. So Scott, I see you. So till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. And look, if I offend you over on TikTok, I don't mean it. Don't take it personally. That's the weirdest platform. I'm just there to stir the pot, but maybe teach you a little something as well. Till next time, stay safe. God bless.
Morning coffee, vanilla latte served to go. I drink it slow. Morning coffee, cappuccino.